Okay, some of you will be able to tell from the laptop that I have underneath here. My general operating principle is if it's not broke, don't fix it. I showed you how to crack nuts with a lopper, and I didn't do it right. So now the fastest way to do it is actually across the narrow end of the nut, where you can just crack them all open in half, and very quickly, just by pointing them down the throat of the lopper, you're using the fuzzy end that retains the hull down into the jaws of the lopper to get the best leverage. Hardly takes any aiming. You can see I'm just running right through this dozen black walnuts here. The next step will be to put them back in the bowl, cut in half again. I was doing that wrong too. Imagine that. But the easiest way to misspell lazy is to say it's efficient. Okay, same deal. We've got the fuzzy end here, as we call it, where the hull husk had been. Run that all the way, and we're again using the curved part of the blade to actually cradle the nut and cut across the nut to make quarters. And you can get through the entire series of a dozen nuts pretty quickly that way. You can see some of the quarters are already popping out. Since I'm trying to work quickly instead of trying to work efficient, as far as keeping the most quarters whole, they're not all staying in the shell. You can see that this way of quartering them is a lot faster. I just did one nut in that first video on showing you this technique. But by going through it this way, you're cutting them into real nice quarters. And these can actually be put out on a table the way they are. You can probably break that with a regular old nut cracker now. Did I already get this one? But what I'm going to do with these now, once they're down into quarters, is I'm going to put the loppers aside and use the wire cutters. A couple of people were talking about wire cutters in the comments the other videos, and I can see how that technique, once they're quartered, does make it very easy to get into them. The reason being, they cut across. I was smashing too many nuts using the loppers for that last stage, because they'll cut across the grain kind of like a pane of glass. If you chip the edge of a pane of glass with pliers, you can get it to break all the way across. And by that I mean cutting across this way frees up any part of a nut that's loose. This shows where the heart is, and in general what we're going to want to do is cut across from that. Had this been a normal nut, you would have seen it was about that side. When it's all covered up, you got to dig in a little bit further. But if you cut in about thirds, you can sometimes cut about half and make only one cut. But if you cut about thirds, you'll find that it's pretty easy to make maybe one more cut to free up that whole quarter. And that quarter is in perfect shape for baking and things like that. Of course, the little pieces, you have to go reward the cutter. This one shows what happens when the nut is exposed across from the heart. You might be able to cut it in half and get it out in one go, but just cut it twice and it's going to come easily. Yeah, as I say that, it doesn't do it right. problem at all. Another really nice looking nut. So this is the way I've been cutting the last dozen a day or so. I like to drop these nice quarters into a shot glass, and then of course you're filling that shot glass up with a good bourbon, and to me it enhances the nut, and the nut enhances the bourbon, so it's kind of a win-win situation there. And there we go, broke that one in half, but again most of a quarter. So each time you go through these, I'm not going to spend the time cutting all of these, but again you can kind of put these out in a bowl at the holiday and put out some pliers with it, and this is not as tough to operate as you know, the loppers are. If you get them just to the first stage, they'll be able to get them out. Enjoy, everyone.